Okay, Apple. We gotta have a conversation. The iPhone 16e is by far the most confusing iPhone I have ever held in my hands. It's Apple's newest budget model iPhone, and at first glance, it very much is. With a familiar design, display, camera, and body, the iPhone 16e is everything you need in an iPhone and nothing that you don't. But for $600, and when placed up against the rest of its iPhone 16 brothers, this phone is not a budget phone. It's a mind trick, and I do not want you guys to get fooled by it. What's going on, guys? Ty Tech here, back again, and here's my review of the iPhone 16e. As always, guys, I'm your host, Ty Tech. Thank you guys for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't be shy. Hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss a future upload. And let me know down in the comments whether or not any of you guys have picked up the iPhone 16e and whether or not you agree with anything I'm about to say in this review. On with the video. Now, because of the very nature of the iPhone 16e and how it was really presented to us by Apple, I have to split this review into two different parts. And those two parts are within the ecosystem and outside of the ecosystem. But if you're within the ecosystem, the iPhone 16e is a fantastic option for you. For $600, you get a 6.1-inch OLED 60 Hz display with a peak brightness of 1200 nits. And honestly, for most iPhone users, this display is perfectly fine. It's fast, smooth, there's no lag, and it's perfect in outdoor conditions with no glare. This is a good display. The type of person that would actually pick up the iPhone 16e has probably never even experienced a 120 Hz display before, especially if they're an iPhone user. So this is the perfect example of what you don't know won't really hurt you. The body resembles more of an iPhone 13 or 14 now. So the sides are now smooth aluminum instead of the previous curved design of the last two iPhone SEs. And now the 16e comes with a smooth matte glass on the back instead of the previous glossy glass. And I have to say, I am a pretty big fan of it. And as someone who's used to using far bigger phones than the 16e, using this phone was actually quite a refreshing experience. This phone was the perfect palm size for my hands. I was able to reach across the screen with just my thumb, which is something I haven't been able to do since I used my iPhone 5S back in high school.
Who the f is that guy?
And if you're coming from an iPhone 13 or 14, all of your old accessories will still work on this phone too. So you can save yourself a couple of bucks on that. And that's because all of your buttons are in the exact same place they were before, except now you do get the action button with the 16e. So rest in peace to the mute switch on Apple phones, but this will give the user more customization and versatility. You get Face ID on this phone now too, so Touch ID is dead as well. We're kind of stacking up bodies here, but it is more efficient and secure. Although it is in the old notch design, which really had me missing Dynamic Island for the entire time that I was using the 16e. The 16e has USB-C in it too, which means now all of Apple's major electronic and phone releases all have USB-C in them. It's about time. On the back, you get a single 48 megapixel 2-in-1 Fusion camera, and on the front, you get a 12 megapixel selfie camera. And the photos you get on the iPhone 16e are pretty respectable, I will say. Colors are rich, not too overly saturated, I will say. And details are crisp when there's enough light. Hold on to that statement for 1 second. Apple Intelligence is also here on this $600 budget phone, which is whatever. But most importantly, in the iPhone 16e, you get the same A18 chip that is used in the base model iPhone 16 and 16 Plus. And although this phone has one less GPU core in it than those two phones, the iPhone 16e was every bit as capable as my iPhone 16. Transitions were smooth, there was no lag when switching in between apps, and doing things like web browsing and playing games for long periods of time was absolutely no problem at all. This is Apple we're talking about. Their phones just kind of work and work well.
All of this just works.
Another problem you will not have with the iPhone 16e is apparently going to be with battery life. Apple markets this phone as having 26 hours of playback time, which is about 2 hours more than the iPhone 16. Now, as someone who normally daily drives an iPhone 16 Pro Max, battery life really has never been a problem for me. I still never had a problem getting through an entire day with some battery life to spare on the 16e. That's a whole day of watching YouTube videos, using navigation, web browsing. This battery is actually very power efficient. But another reason why that battery life is apparently so good is Apple's first in-house custom cellular modem called the C 1. Now that modem does require some more in-depth testing to really see what the benefit of that modem is going to be. Whenever I ran a speed test, the iPhone 16 did routinely outpace the iPhone 16e as far as cellular data speeds, but I assume that this modem is going to make enough of an impact to put it in Apple's future phones, which is allegedly the plan. Overall, I would say the iPhone 16e, for the kind of iPhone user that's actually going to pick up this phone, is actually pretty fine. It only comes in 2 colors, black and white, but again, I don't really think it's going to be a problem because with the iPhone 16e, you get a familiar design, great battery life, a good camera, USB-C, Apple Intelligence, the action button. For the kind of iPhone user that's actually going to pick up this phone, which is older people who are switching from one carrier to another, they're at an iPhone 11 or something old like that and just want a newer upgraded iPhone, or maybe even a parent that's trying to add a line to their account just so they can get their kid the cheapest phone possible while keeping their bill down. This phone is perfect for people like them. So for that, I'm going to give the iPhone 16e an A for within the ecosystem. But now we have to talk about the iPhone 16e outside of the ecosystem, because outside of the ecosystem, this is the worst iPhone Apple has ever made. I'm not talking from a performance standpoint or use standpoint, because all of Apple's devices just work and work well. But from a pure customer treatment standpoint, especially when you put this phone up next to the rest of the iPhone 16 lineup, the iPhone 16e shares about 90% of the same DNA as the iPhone 16. 6.1-inch display, same biometrics, USB-C, Apple Intelligence, the action button. But how exactly does that justify a 70% markup from the last budget model iPhone device? And why is it priced so close to the base model iPhone 16? Well, Apple is playing a bit of a mind game with their own consumer base, unfortunately. In the US, where most people tend to own an iPhone and where most people get their phones through carriers and their carrier promotions, the average customer is going to see the iPhone 16e next to the iPhone 16 and see that the iPhone 16 not only has better features like the dynamic island, it comes in more color options to fit the personality of whoever owns it better, but it also has a useful ultra-wide camera to it. You'll see an absolutely minute difference in monthly price and be more enticed to spend $200 more on the iPhone 16 than on the iPhone 16e, and frankly, I would do that because let me tell you, the cameras between the iPhone 16e and the iPhone 16 are not the same. Because while the 16 and 16e both have 48 megapixel main sensors, the sensor on the 16e is much smaller, which means the amount of detail that you're going to be getting into each photo is much smaller as well. You'll see this more in low light situations because since the sensor is smaller, it just leads to overly exposed photos and videos because there's so much excess light that has nowhere to go. There's no cinematic mode on the iPhone 16e, which is probably not going to be a problem for the kind of person that's actually going to pick up this phone, but you literally have the camera on this phone that makes cinematic mode work. And lastly, for some unknown reason, I haven't figured it out yet, the portrait mode on your main camera on the back cannot take a portrait mode photo of anything other than a person, but the 12 megapixel selfie camera on the front can. Apple is essentially using their own customer base's lack of tech knowledge. Please forgive me if I'm offending any Apple users, my apologies. And hoping that their own consumer base won't notice that if they were to take that same $600 that they would spend on the iPhone 16e, they could go out and buy a pre-owned iPhone 15 or iPhone 15 Pro, which would give them a much better experience than the iPhone 16e could ever give them, with the only difference being whether or not you want to spend $600 today out of your own pocket or $600 over a 2 to 3 year period through your carrier. It's made even worse by the fact that Apple didn't add MagSafe to this phone, which is why this phone now charges at a slower rate of wireless charging than it did before. You could have kept all the Apple Intelligence out of this phone, added MagSafe, kept it at $600, and that still would have been ridiculously overpriced. That still would have been more palatable because there would have been one more useful feature to this phone, rather than a feature that about 3/4 of your own consumer base have told you that they don't even use. There's no ultra wideband in this phone either, so if you have AirTags, congratulations, every $30 that you just spent is now heavily nerfed because you can't even use the precision fighting feature on the iPhone 16e anymore. Like I've said a couple times in this video, the iPhone 16e has a target demographic, and those two demographics are old people and the parents of young children. But this phone is essentially a way of Apple playing on those two demographics' lack of overall tech savviness to know that they probably don't have the knowledge to know a better use of that $600, or the fact that they probably don't have $600 readily available to spend on a better purchase option right now. So they'd rather spend about $50 on activation and taxes in store and spend the rest of that money on school clothes, groceries, and other objectively more important things. The iPhone 16e, when reviewed in a vacuum, is a good iPhone that's going to fit the needs of most iPhone users. Even I would be remiss as a tech enthusiast if I didn't say that using the iPhone SE was a bit of a wake-up call for me, because it made me realize how much I've been drastically overspending on my phones year on year. However, I am the exception, not the rule. I'm a much more tech-savvy person, so when I review this phone as a whole with the rest of the smartphone marketplace, $600 for a 6.1-inch 60 hertz display having device with one camera, no color options, no MagSafe, the removal of two useful camera features when it doesn't seem like that needed to be the case, and the fact that it inadvertently nerfs one of Apple's own products, this phone is trash to me. Honestly, not from a use or performance perspective, from a person perspective, a human perspective. We deserve better than this at this point, and Apple should know better than this at this point. If you're a normal iPhone user, this phone is going to do everything that you need it to, but in the grand scheme of things, that does not stop this iPhone from being the worst iPhone that Apple has ever created, in my opinion, simply because it compromises so much simply for it to exist. Final grade for the iPhone 16e overall, C-. Because damn, even the 5C back in the day had more of a purpose for existing. But guys, that's gonna do it for my review of the iPhone 16e. If you or anyone you know are sort of basic iPhone users, you've been using iPhones your entire life, and you just need a cheap upgrade to the next good iPhone that comes with a familiar design, great battery life, all the features you really need for a relatively low price in Apple world, I'll leave some shopping links in the description below for the iPhone 16e for you guys. But as always, the choice is yours. Make your move. That's going to do it for me, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Later. What's going on, guys? Ty Tech here. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video and would like to check out more, go ahead and click on one of my other videos that should be floating around the screen right now. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Later.